We're the Vinyl Verdict. You know who we are. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone. Today we're reviewing straight up the original album, so something kind of different. This is a deep cut, probably only for the super fans. And about half of these songs were never released until they came out as bonus tracks, 40-something years later. But we're going to look at the original track listing and sequencing and kind of talk through our impressions of that, as well as how it compares to the final version of the album. And the history behind this is pretty interesting. It's not the last time it would happen to Badfinger. Basically, they released No Dice in November 1970, and in January and February of 71, they were already working with Geoff Emerick again. Started touring in early 71 thinking the album's done. They finished their follow-up to No Dice, and they only found out in May, upon getting back from that tour, that Apple had rejected the album. Not really clear, what the feedback was, and did they actually tell Badfinger which songs to keep and which ones to replace and everything? It's very unknown. Notably, there were 12 songs submitted as part of this original Straight Up album, and 6 of them made it to the final version of Straight Up that you heard at the end of 71. Joey is on record saying, he prefers this original version of Straight Up, that it actually captured the feel of the band more. There's 12 songs on it. Let's look at the breakdown of them. One of them was written by the entire band, I'll Be the One. One of them was written by Pete, Mike, and Joey, Baby Please. One of them was written by Joey and Tommy, Flying, which was on the final album. And then beyond those three were written by Joey, 3 by Tom, 2 by Pete, 1 by Mike. Compared to the final version of Straight Up, this one feels much more evenly composed by all of the band. And I think that's kind of interesting how much that shifted towards the later version. All right, well, let's go through the original track listing. So let's pretend it's December 1971 and you put the record on, and instead of Take It All, you hear Suitcase. Pretty different album already.
It's a tremendously different sound. It's heavy. The guitar is all over it in a different way. Really almost like a Constitution-like drive and heaviness to it, which is a shock when you first hear it if you're familiar with the George Harrison produced Straight Up with that slide, which is still to me the definitive Suitcase, which I love. And seeing them live, that's the Suitcase they played, although they had that long jam, of course, which was tacked onto it. But the Suitcase started with the Pete Ham slide, as the record does. Although the guitar playing on this version is fantastic.
It's super weird, though, right? Because where is the slide guitar? That was one of my
I think it's at the ending, but not...
Kind of, but he's bending to it. But there's that version where they play it live in late 1970, and they're using slide there already. So it is kind of weird that they didn't use it on this recording of it.
I don't know. I will say the final Suitcase, I'm a victim of circumstance, as somebody famous once said. But the George Harrison produced slide and the sound that I was familiar with, I would say makes for the more commercial sound.
It's so slowed down and distorted compared to the final version. That was very clean and, again, no effect.
That's true.
Yeah. Vocals and everything. The lyrics here are, he does say pusher, pusher, yes. So it was before George came in with that feedback.
Yes.
That's very famous. It sounds to me like he misses one of the intros when he says driver, driver after the solo. It might be a false start.
I don't know if a false start, but whether it was intentional or not. Just to make I almost
sounds live.
I always took it as intentional. But
with this and a lot of the other ones that they did keep on, even the ones that kept on the album, they're the same structure. Like it almost, I think they re-recorded most of them, but the verse, chorus, solo, all that structure is exactly the same. It's just the arrangement they completely changed for the re-release version. So that speaks to the rejection being, I guess, the commercial aspect of it. So then we move on to the second song, I'll Be the One, written by all the members of the band. And actually this one had a catalog number as a single before anything else emerged. And this was recorded right January 1971, right after No Dice. And it's interesting they all have writing credit. I always thought it was more of a Tom song, maybe just because you hear his voice the loudest in it. And the melody maybe seems a little more Joey Molland-ish.
I did hear Joey in some interview or read him, perhaps it was in that Michael Cimino book, I don't know, but I know that he spoke of that he had written the chorus to I'll Be the One, and some combination of the other guys or whoever, that they had the verses already.
And then, Pete's filling in everything on guitar, a lot of solo, lead work, filling in everything, and it just kind of chugs along, and the beat to this was like a proto-Baby Blue beat. It kind of has that Mersey beat almost.
It's a unique beat to it. I think through the years, I'll say just it's grown on me. It's become more and more of a kind of a well-written song. I also love at the ending the classic Badfinger chords that they were using so much at this time as they fade out with the beautiful harmony. Just the classic, it may be 3 chords, but it could have been, there's nothing more beautiful. And Joey Lowe and they're all in it, and just similar to some chords in Perfection, Name of the Game. It was just this period where they were doing that in part.
Great choral harmonies throughout it, definitely.
Yes.
Really good blend of their voices.
Yeah, and it's something to think about that it didn't make it onto any album, because I think the guitar playing and his answering phrases to the vocals and everything are superb. It's their own thing. Badfinger just comes alive in this, but obviously it wasn't chosen for the album.
It does feel fully finished, almost over any song on the album. It feels completely ready to put out there. I don't know why, like you said, why wouldn't they add it to another album or as just a single between albums? I mean, what could George have not liked about this one?
Oh, I don't know his involvement in this. That's a very good subject.
We get to track 3, No Good at All, Tom Evans' contribution. I love it, but I can understand why this one was rejected. That's really all I can say. I mean, it feels like a jam song.
It's a Tommy screamer and a rocker. It almost seems like it could have been made up on the spot.
It's like a sequel to Rock of All Ages or something, where it's just purely a canvas for his vocals to go nuts. But the way the vocals are recorded sounds so much muddier, and like the lyrics they're a little more unclear. You can't really hear what he's saying in certain parts. I think that's like lacking the commercial aspect a bit. And then here you get a slide guitar solo. Not really on Suitcase, but on this song, which was weird. And then Tom also sings a harmony during the solo. Why not put a harmony anywhere else in the song or have someone else sing with it? It was weird. Yeah, especially the ending. It just felt like an unused take. Like they could have done this 1 or 2 more times.
It's in a minor, doesn't it? Like on a really weird ending.
Yeah,
yeah,
really bizarre.
Yeah, I pretty much would agree with that. It's nobody could do the rock voice better. The song I don't see on any album really. He was doing these. And I'm glad it's there.
You don't really get these on any albums, though. Like, you get Rock of All Ages, I mean, and then that's it. That style of Tom Evans is not represented on the studio albums here. So, I mean, this was the chance, but I guess they rejected it. So then we get into Sweet Tuesday Morning. This is the Joey Mullen song, probably the most similar to the final version of any of this stuff on the unreleased album. I think Tom's finger picking, the third acoustic guitar that's kind of in the center, was a little bit easier to hear. It seemed like it was mixed louder. Joey's voice was a little bit less produced on it, and then there's maybe a little bit of a different arrangement. It was like shakers and some bells that are maybe a little more eerie towards the end.
Just a slightly earlier version, a little less produced and completely whole. It's already all there.
They must have used the same backing track and just changed it. I don't think this was a re-recording. Yeah,
I don't know. But Sweet Tuesday Morning seems like it emerged whole, and just there it was.
Then we get into Baby Please. I said, I don't know about the sequencing here. I don't understand the sequencing. This was our favorite, I think, of all the Badfinger bonus tracks, right?
This was the one that was legendary, where I hadn't heard it, and people you'd hear it talked about or written about as the internet started. What's Baby Please? Why don't they release Baby Please? And then somewhere along the line, I don't know, some years ago, it came out.
Yeah, and it sounds the most like a single. Like we heard this and we're like, this is everything we love about Badfinger. It's got a commercial thing. I think Tom Evans wasn't there, right?
That's correct. That's what I heard.
So my assumption was it was a jam. I didn't know that this was like written, and why would they, if they really wanted to do this song, why would they only record it the one day Tom Evans?
Well, not only that, who's doing the high harmony in this? That's another question.
Yeah.
When they go into the break of chords before the solo, is just so much like, it's so beautiful to listen to. I don't know, they use that phrase, ear candy and all that stuff. I don't know, but it's just so delightful. It's really powerful Badfinger stuff. I'm amazed that it sat not on an album ever.
There's not a ton of call and response with this band. It's usually more harmonies, but I love the call and response in the solo where you get Pete Ham doing Please, in the falsetto, then afterwards it's Joey doing Stay, like really deep.
Oh, that's great.
So it's like they're kind of messing around.
Good point. Yeah, I love that. And as a matter of fact, just the Baby Please line, when you hear that Pete Ham voice go up in the lower register, like Baby Please, no. Yeah. I mean, it goes right through you. I mean, it's just one of those Pete Ham things.
And then the guitar solo, I think, is one of the best in all of Badfinger. It's credited to Pete on Badfinger Live, but it sounds to me 100% like Joey. I have to think it's Joey, just how offbeat he's doing the multiple string stuff, and how could Pete play that and sing? Because he's doing that while there's singing happening, unless it's really double tracked or something. And then at the end, Mike's really, he changes the whole drums in the outro and kind of he leans even more into the offbeat. So it gets like the swing gets even harder a little bit there. Yeah, then we get into Mean Mean Jemima, which is another Joey rock song. I think this is the best jam feeling song on the album, because there's a lot of songs on here that seem like they came out of a jam. That one really gives you the impression of just everything the band has to offer and just a nice blues groove to the whole thing. I like this version probably better than the one Joey recorded in his solo career, and I think it's got a really nice feel to it.
Well, it's a fantastic effort, and depends how you feel about it. This Mean Mean Jemima could go on a little bit, maybe seem a little monotonous if you didn't know the band, because it's slower. Yeah. But it's the groove now, and it's compared to Joey's recording of it for his solo album After the Pearl, which just took off like a rocket, which is pure rock. I guess I heard that first, so that almost seems like the one. But then this is Badfinger, yeah. And it's quite interesting to listen to. And again, didn't get put on any album, so it seems also pretty complete.
Yeah, it seems like a logical progression of the band, which I think is what Joey was always saying, is that, this is more like what the band sounded like after No Dice. It does feel like an unwinding of No Dice, where it's still that house band, but now they're a little bit less restrained to the 3-minute pop song thing, and it's like a slightly looser version of that No Dice band. Mm-hmm. That's the end of side 1, according to the original LP that was submitted. It makes sense that the song runs on a little bit long towards the end of the side, but I don't know if it's the best side closer either. So the sequencing here is all a little bit weird. Should we flip it over?
Sure.
All right. We hypothetically flip over this album that never came out, and we get to side 2. Name of the Game. Such a weird opening to the side, because this was the closing of side 1 on the final album. So it's weird they use this as the opening to side 2. Maybe it's because this acoustic version is a little bit brighter, and it's still a slower song, but it chugs along maybe a little bit more than the final version of Name of the Game, for sure. Totally different energy then.
Totally different energy. It's guitar driven, and this is beautiful also. The orchestration that they did on the chorus, I remember being stunned when I first heard it. It's just doesn't quite come where you think it would. It's maybe not as heavy and somber, but it's a thinking man song when you listen to it nevertheless. It's fascinating to hear how it originally was done, how they originally did it.
It's a single now. I think it sounds more like a single, just given the speed and everything.
Yeah.
And the George Martin production, I'm mixed about it. I think this, and it's very rare for me to ever say that. I think I love almost anything George Martin does. It feels a little overplayed in certain parts without there being like a bridge, because it's just the band and then this heavy, what feels like 30-piece orchestra or something. There could be something like that piano bridging it a bit more, and I think that would help. I like in the verses what he adds, because that's much more subtle and kind of just like building these big chords.
It's beautiful.
The version that was released on this, remaster, and we've heard it everywhere, and it's on the very best of, it always says single version. But my understanding is the single version was actually the version Al Kooper added organ to in May. So he created a totally separate mix from the one that was submitted on this original album. I think what we're hearing on all these recordings is the original version that was submitted as part of the Straight Up album in March of '71. We've never heard that Al Kooper mix, because there is no organ on this recording. Never heard it, so I'd be interested to maybe get that someday. The next track is Loving You by Mike Gibbons, and Mike Gibbons actually sings on it. Mike Gibbons did not get a vocal track on No Dice or Straight Up. Would have been interesting to have him singing a song like this. It's pretty well produced. I think there's interesting chord changes here, and it's in waltz time, so it's like that 3/4 time, which gives it a slightly different feel from the rest of the album. I think it's a nice song, good lead work on it.
The guitar work is interesting as Pete Ham comes to start to answer some of the phrasing and all that. I think it's a worthy effort. I think that Mike Gibbons had it in him, as he showed, to write some really beautiful songs. This particular song I don't feel is as strong as the other songs.
I think it fits with the feel of this unreleased album, like with I'll Be the One and the country feel. But the final version of Straight Up, that once it got really commercial and had that bigger sound, I don't think it belongs on there anymore. So it makes sense that one was cut.
It does.
So then we get into the Money Flying medley, and I don't mind the medley being so much later on the album. I think because it almost happens so quick on the final Straight Up. You get into this like slowed down, heavier part of the album. It's kind of nice to save it for the end. I really like what George Martin did with these, maybe with the exception of copying that riff again at the end with the orchestration, like copying the exact same guitar riff, but it's kind of cleaner, and I like the flying's not sped up. I actually think it's a little bit easier to listen to.
Well, also you have to say with the money, of course, the harmony is fantastic. Just love hearing the harmony generally between Joey and Tommy, and Pete also when he comes in. But the guitar riff is different than the one they came up with on the final Straight Up for Money, rather than, well, it was changed.
Simplified.
Maybe, and for the better, probably. The transition to flying is also, of course, different, as you said, and takes some getting used to, and probably just because I heard it first, I enjoy the way it was finally done.
You know, a lot of Tommy stuff towards the end of the album, because then the next song is also Tom Evans, Sing for the Song.
I don't know what this is. It reminds me a little of Ivy-ish cuteness, but not exactly. It's a little older now, and then the idea of so many people in the studio. I heard the story through actually someone who knew Tommy and knew them. I guess they got everybody in Abbey Road was in the studio when they did this. It just seems like some kind of novelty song, although his voice is crystal and pure, and I love it. But in the end, it's just like a novelty song.
Okay, I guess from a sequencing standpoint, again, I like that the piano connects from flying into this. It kind of works. It's not a medley, but it sort of continues the pattern. And I like the old-timey piano solo that adds a little bit of character on the album. And then ending with everyone singing. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like a novelty song. It seems like the melody, too, is like a Ruddles version of a Magical Mysteries tour song. Doesn't it? It really reminded me of like Cheese and Onion or something, that Ruddles song.
Maybe.
And there's some weird kind of psychedelic thing on top of it.
Yes, yes. So it's got that dreamy Tommy thing going a little bit.
And then how about this? We end, because It's Over isn't written yet, or it's not recorded yet at least. So we end with Perfection, the Pete Ham song. I have no issue ending the album with that if It's
powerful.
Over doesn't exist.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
It's always powerful.
Yeah, it's not too different. The structure's about the same. The synth gets a little obnoxious for me.
Yes.
So then the second solo is harmonica instead of a second guitar solo. So I like to think maybe, this was kind of an attempt, and obviously Pete likes playing harmonica, and then, when they did Straight Up, you figured he'd go in and lay in the guitar part.
In the end, it's just him acoustically driving it on the guitar the same way, and I think it's a good way to end this album as far as that goes. I mean, it was a big song.
Okay, so that's the unreleased Straight Up album that, was rejected by Apple in May, and they went back to the drawing board with George Harrison and Todd Rundgren later on to re-record the final version that was released in December of '71. My major takeaway from listening to this thing in its original sequence, I think it's Pete Ham that really benefited from the later version, because he both wrote and recorded Day After Day and Baby Blue, and his songs were the ones that changed the most, because when you look at Perfection and Name of the Game and sound completely different, The energy of them is so different, versus Sweet Tuesday Morning, Money Flying, like a lot of them had changes, but they didn't really change the energy of those songs. They just tweaked a little bit of it. The only stuff from here that made it to that final version that Pete Ham wrote are Name of the Game and Perfection, and those were radically changed in the final version.
But Suitcase we have to count as George getting in there, and really, I would say that's changed, although in a way it's the same song.
Let us know what you think, and let us know, what do you think the best single on Straight Up would have been? Baby Please, I'll Be the One, Name of the Game. What would you have picked as the single?
The Badfinger album that never was.